Peace, love, liberty, radio.
And the walls come crashing down as the war at home reaches your town. You have no choice, it's safe and clean. We all submit to the war machine.
So I want to begin the show with some announcements. I actually have several of them. First off, if you've listened to the show for a while, you know that since about March, I've been on a diet trying to lose weight. Well, I finally hit one of my milestones, one of the goals that I was hoping to hit. I am now below 200 pounds. It's the first time since I was in college about 18 or 19 years ago that I've been below 200 pounds. So I'm below 200. I've still got about maybe 18, 19 pounds to go. I'm now hoping to hit 180. I've not been below 180 since I was in high school, over 20 years ago. But at the rate I'm going, I should hit 180 by probably Thanksgiving. And, you know, I'll see where I stand at that point. The other announcement that I have before I sort of give an update about the presidential debate that happened on Saturday, I committed an act of civil disobedience yesterday. I actually committed 2 acts of civil disobedience yesterday. I performed a wedding. It was the 4th wedding that I've performed, and it's the 3rd of the 4 that were performed in New Hampshire, and technically all of the ones performed in New Hampshire were the same act of civil disobedience. There's a statute on the books here in New Hampshire that makes it a violation. It's illegal, punishable by a fine of $60 to perform a wedding when the couple does not have a government marriage license. So I committed that again, the 3rd time that I've committed that offense here in New Hampshire. And, you know, I would love for some police officer somewhere to charge me with this so that I can take it to trial and show what a ridiculous charade this is, because I give them a marriage license that says common law marriage certificate. What's the difference between the certificate that I give, that they sign, that is signed by witnesses, and it says they're married, and the piece of paper that some bureaucrat would give them? Other than they did not give me money, and I do not threaten them with, you must abide by my rule. They were looking, a couple of my friends were looking for someone to do the wedding, and I said, well, I've married people before, and it's always been stateless, and they said, good, because we don't want the state involved. I said, all right, well, let's do this, and after it's over, I'll give you 2 copies of a common law marriage certificate. They're like, what do we do with it? I said, whatever you want to. You can frame it, put it on a wall, you can, send it off to some government agent if you want to for some reason. Because there have actually, of the couples that I married, one of the couples, it was actually the first couple that I married, they filed a copy with like the recorder of records with some county in Colorado, and the state of Colorado accepted the common law marriage certificate as a valid marriage thing. So they got their marriage recognized by a government entity without actually going through the government entity to get the slip in the first place. The second couple that I married in Ohio, they were able to use the common law marriage certificate to prove to a court that they were married. And they did this because there was some sort of child support sort of thing going on, to where it terminated when the one party got married. And they're like, we're married, here's this. And the judge says, oh, yeah, okay, you're married. So, people have used the common law certificate to show that they're married. And if that's what they want to do, fine. Whatever. I'm doing this because, there should not be government regulations on how people wind up getting married if people want to get married. And there are still groups where, 2 people just decide we're married, and the church says, oh, okay, you're married now. The Quakers have something similar to where if two Quakers want to get married, they basically walk up to the front of the church and say, hey, everybody, we're married now. And everybody says, hey, yay, congratulations. Like that. That's a Quaker wedding. And so, like I would love to be able to, get charged with violating this RSA. And that's revised statutes annotated. That's what they call the statutes in New Hampshire. So I would love to get charged with this so I can sit up on the stand and have some prosecutor ask me questions about why I did it and why I didn't get the state slip or why the couple didn't and whatever. Like I would gladly testify, and then I would gladly not pay the $60 fine or the $180 if they want to charge me for the ones that happened 4 and 5 years ago. Whatever. I'm not going to pay, and I'll gladly sit in jail. I've sat in jail before for a fine. I'll sit in jail again for a fine. $50 a day credit, so for $60, they'll keep me in there for like 25 hours. If they charge me with all 3 offenses and convict me of all 3, then okay, it's 3.5 days? Yeah, I can do that. No problem. Not a problem at all. So let me now talk about the presidential debate that happened on Saturday, because I want to make sure that I mention that before the end of this segment. So on Saturday, I drove down to Worcester, Massachusetts. That's Worcester. How they pronounce that Worcester makes absolutely no sense to me, other than just like pull letters out and whatever. And that should not be confused with Worcester, that is spelled Wooster. So there's a Worcester and a Worcester, spelled completely different, but it kind of, might confuse people that aren't from Massachusetts. But the Massachusetts Libertarian Party, they hosted a presidential debate for libertarians. It was actually the first debate among libertarian presidential candidates. There was me, Steve Kerbel, Mark Allen Feldman, and then arriving about halfway through the debate was Derek Michael Reed. And, I'll post the link in the show notes so that you can watch the debate at your leisure. But I will say that one of the 3 men, other than myself, is a master of doublespeak, meaning that he will say things that seem contradictory, but he uses it in a sentence, and he tries to pass it off as a rational statement. And another one who I will go ahead and give a spoiler here, he's the guy that showed up late. He sounds more fit with the Republican Party, and he would not even be like a mainstream Republican. He would be sort of like one of the crazy kook Republicans. He was talking about restoring the Republic, and we need to build up a strong national defense, and, this, that, the other thing. He did not fit in with the Libertarian Party. I have no clue why he calls himself a libertarian, other than maybe he wants to be the big fish in the little pond. I don't know. But like I said, I'll post the link in the show notes. You can watch that debate at your leisure. There's also a poll that somebody created asking, who do you think won the debate? So I'll post that link in the show notes as well. Make sure you vote and be honest. Vote for the person that you think honestly won the debate. And give me your feedback. Let me know things that I said that you don't agree with, things I said that you think I should have said differently. And I'll be back with more here on Peace, Love, and Liberty Radio.
Hey, this is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends radio show. I've been working with computer programmer Derek Slopey to create Fiend Phone. I'm using Fiend Phone right now to talk with and record one of my co-hosts in real time. Take it, Davi.
Hey, this is Davi Barker, and I'm 1,000 miles away from Michael, but we sound like we're in the same room.
We sure do, Davi. So, Davi, please tell the nice people more about Fiend Phone.
Fiend Phone is free, open-source software that opens up a global world of possibilities for collaborative, high-quality remote voice media production, and I'm digging it.
People can try the Windows beta version of Fiend Phone right now at fiendphone.com. But we're also raising money to vastly improve Fiend Phone and vastly improve independent talk media worldwide.
So go to fiendphone.com to help out. Who will build the audio roads? We will, with your help.
That's fiendphone.com. FEENPHONE.com. Foxtrot, Echo, November, phone.com.
Fiend Phone. I never knew remote audio could be this good.
When her plush and comfy life suddenly and unexpectedly fell apart, Brooke and her dog Cloud set out to defy the odds. If this is a man's world, as they say, living on the streets is no place for a young woman. One day she awoke in the redwood forest and realized she had become a hobo, and would ultimately come to know exactly what it means to survive. How to Be a Hobo by Brooke Willett is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
So before I jump into the news that I have for this Monday, I want to make sure that I tell you about a way that you can keep your money in the free market, assuming that you use free market money. Do you like free market money? Do you like to keep your money in the free market? Do you promote Bitcoin as an alternative in this fiat-centric world? If so, you need Spend-A-Bit in your arsenal. Spend-A-Bit is the search engine for things you can buy with Bitcoin. Spend-A-Bit aggregates millions of products from thousands of Bitcoin-enabled merchants. Keep your money in the free economy. Spend-A-Bit. Use my affiliate link, spendabit.fppradio.com. And if you're a Bitcoin accepting merchant, ask about their merchant suite to reach even more customers. Spendabit.fppradio.com. That's spendabit.fppradio.com. Now, there's more news about something that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, and as long as news comes out about this, I will keep talking about it. This in question is the Doctors Without Borders hospital that was attacked by the U.S. military in Kunduz, Afghanistan. The news came out yesterday that the Pentagon has reported initial findings in its internal investigation of the attack earlier this month on a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Kunduz, Afghanistan, an airstrike that killed 22 civilians and has fueled calls for an independent investigation into potential war crimes. The story here comes from antiwar.com, and they report the Pentagon's comments, reported to CNN, were largely in keeping with what Doctors Without Borders had already reported, affirming that the hospital was known and documented by the Pentagon, that Doctors Without Borders, quote, unquote, did everything right in informing the U.S. of the location of the facility, and that Doctors Without Borders, as they reported the day of the incident, contacted the Pentagon immediately upon the first strike on the facility. That's where things get murky, though. The Pentagon concedes that the hospital was restricted not to be attacked under any circumstances, and that they were informed earlier in the attack that they were hitting a hospital. Despite this, the attacks continued for a solid hour, and Pentagon officials say the call was quickly put into our system. Quote, beyond that, I can't say where it went. That according to the Pentagon official, who, as they often do, spoke on the condition of anonymity. The article from antiwar.com continues. It says, this only adds to the question about the attack. As U.S. ground troops were reported previously to have been conducting surveillance of the hospital on suspicion of a Pakistani spy was within, some reports even cited officials claiming the attack was legitimate because it may have killed the spy. None of the Doctors Without Borders staff was Pakistani in origin, and they had no indication any of the patients were either. And again, it must be reiterated that in accordance with international humanitarian law, if you're going to bomb a hospital because you think that they have, a quote-unquote enemy in the hospital, you must notify the hospital before beginning the attack. The U.S. military did not do that. They also did not stop bombing once they were notified that they were attacking a hospital. The article here continues. It says the comments on Sunday have U.S. officials trying to disavow that narrative, at any rate, the narrative of oh, we thought there was a Pakistani spy in the hospital, so we bombed it to kill the spy. Well, apparently now they're trying to disavow that narrative, saying it is preposterous to think that the U.S. would knowingly attack a protected facility, even if it knew there was a target within. Yet the U.S. military did attack the facility and confirms it was protected, and so far there has not been even a mediocre excuse for it. Instead, U.S. officials seem to be determined to keep the incident as shrouded in mystery as possible, leaking only bare minimum narratives, while the White House openly rejects the idea of allowing an international investigation and dismisses the suggestion that attacking a hospital full of civilians is even a potential war crime. As for Doctors Without Borders, they're still pushing for the probe, though after last week when a U.S. tank smashed its way into the now-closed hospital, causing major damage and destroying potential evidence, the prospects that there will be anything left, even if the U.S. gets around to allowing a legitimate investigation, seems remote. So let me add my thoughts, which I've already expressed several times, but I will reiterate once again. This is a war crime. At the very least, it's a potential war crime, but all of the evidence that has been admitted by the U.S. military is that this was a war crime. U.S. military, let me go back to the beginning of this article from antiwar.com, where the Pentagon reported to CNN that Doctors Without Borders did everything right by informing the military of their location, that the Pentagon knew that it was a protected facility, and they reported on the day of the incident that the Pentagon was notified immediately upon the first strike on the facility, meaning Doctors Without Borders did what they were supposed to do. They told the Pentagon and the Afghan military, here's where we are. They told them, we're a hospital. You know we're a hospital. They're like, yep, you're a hospital. We don't attack hospitals. That's not something we do. And when they did attack the hospital, Doctors Without Borders called, hey, you're attacking a hospital. They're like, oh, yeah, I guess we are. And they kept bombing it for an hour. They claim, again, the initial claim that apparently now is, or not the initial claim, but I think it was like the third claim, was, oh, there was a Pakistani spy inside the hospital, so that's why we bombed it. They're now disavowing that, and we wouldn't bomb a hospital because there was a Pakistani spy in the hospital. That's not something we would do. But apparently it was something they thought about doing because they at least gave it as an excuse one time. But the initial response was it was a mistake. Then they said the Afghan military asked us to do it. Then they said there was a Pakistani spy. Now they're saying we don't know what the hell happened. But in either case, whether the Afghan military asked you to bomb the hospital, whether there was a Pakistani spy in the hospital, and the Afghan military said, hey, there's a Pakistani spy in here, go kill him. No matter what it is, the international humanitarian law was not followed. The laws of war were not followed. A violation of the laws of war is a war crime. So at the very least, the Pentagon is admitting that they may have committed a war crime, but yet Barack Obama does not want there to be an investigation into whether or not there was a war crime. Probably because it would look really, really, really bad for a Nobel Peace Prize winner to wind up getting convicted of a war crime. And speaking of Nobel Peace Prize winners, Doctors Without Borders was also a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And a different Peace Prize, one that you can actually vote on. Voting is open for a couple more weeks for the FPP Peace Prize. Go vote now, peaceprize.fpp.cc. Voting ends the first Tuesday of November. And stay tuned to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. There's more show in just a moment. During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs, with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So what do you do if you're a young woman and you have incredibly high student loans? There are a lot of various ways that you could wind up paying off your loans. There are various jobs you could get. But what if the field that you studied is one of these fields where it's difficult to find a job? Well, there might be some hope for you. That is, if you are willing to do something a bit unusual. The owner of the Moonlight Bunny Ranch apparently is offering to help young women pay their student loans. The story here comes from the Daily Caller. Dennis Hoff, the owner of the Moonlight Bunny Ranch, a legal brothel in Nevada, has announced he will pay down student loans for new sex workers. The story, again, comes from the Daily Caller, and they say, like any successful pimp, and I take issue with the term pimp because it's one of those intentionally derogatory terms. Although I think Cat Williams once defined pimp as a person in a management position. So, well, whatever. But it seems to me like it's one of those terms that is supposed to be intentionally derogatory. But Dennis Hoff is the owner of the Moonlight Bunny Ranch brothel, and he has attached a few conditions to his generous offer. In a nutshell, though, Hoff says he will make matching payments equal to the amount each woman earns as a sex worker. The offer is good for up to 60 days of hustling at the legendary Publicity Hounds Bordello just outside of Carson City. Also, the women must have attended accredited 2- or 4-year universities. So anybody that wound up going to, like Harvard State University of West Portland, which is not an actual school, by the way, that has any legitimacy, they would not be able to wind up getting their student loans paid off. But, like if you went to a quote-unquote real school like University of Alabama, North Carolina State University, Vanderbilt, etc., then you would qualify for the offer that Hoff has made. Over the years, Hoff has said he noticed that more and more of his employees are attractive young women who have accumulated large amounts of student debt and must now find some enterprising way to pay the debt off. He said in a statement, quote, "I had a University of Michigan cheerleader named Chrissy Summers come to the Bunny Ranch a few years ago after she was $40,000 in debt with a student loan. She paid them all off in 2 months. She even ended up liking the business and staying long enough to fund her graduate studies." Hoff added that he is able to hire local college girls thanks to sociology professors who bring classes to his house of ill repute to observe what goes on. Hoff says, quote, "Each year a couple of students end up coming back to fill out applications. I never forget a pretty face, and when I see the girl working as one of our legal prostitutes, and when I ask her where I know her from, she always says, the sociology department field trip. Hoff also said that his management is to help create a better world. He declared, quote, making education affordable to all who want it is a humanitarian endeavor, and says that he feels a responsibility to use his position as a famous person in a management position to help others in that regard. Now, let me pause for a moment here and just say that I've done some selective editing in the way I've read this article from the Daily Caller. Again, because they're using some terms that I find to be a little derogatory, and there's a couple of the things that they've written that I sort of felt odd reading the way I did, but nonetheless, I just want to pause to make that notation, as well as mention that you may have heard of a porn star by the name of Belle Knox. She went to Duke University, and she decided, you know what, I don't want to go into debt, and I can't get all the student aid that I need, so she decided to make porn videos. And apparently she was doing fairly well for herself using the pseudonym Belle Knox instead of her real name. And then some horny guy that went to Duke, who apparently watched a bunch of porn, noticed Belle Knox and was like, hey, wait, I know you from porn. And so it became like this huge national story, like this girl at Duke is a porn star, and how could she? And, you know, like, Duke is supposed to be a place for smart people, and smart people don't have sex on film, apparently. But she's now turned that into, like, a fairly lucrative speaking thing to where she goes around and talks about the sex work business. And, you know, like, I completely admire people that are able to make money doing something that most people do absolutely free. And it's one of the questions when the topic of prostitution comes up, and some people say, no, prostitution needs to be illegal because it's immoral. And I ask the question, what is the moral difference between paying someone directly for something that somebody else gives away for free, or meeting someone at a bar, buying a couple of drinks, and then having a one-night stand? What is the moral difference between the two? And I contend that there isn't one. And nobody that I have ever asked that question to has been able to tell me the moral difference. They always come up with, well, on the one you're giving her money and the other you're giving the bar money. Okay, but still, what's the moral difference between a one-night stand and paying a woman to have sex? There is no moral difference between the two things. The article here from Daily Caller continues. It says, according to data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, America's collective student loan debt is currently more than $1.16 trillion, which amounts to approximately $28,400 for each college graduate. And let me add one thing here real quick. There are people who have college debt that never graduated college, so you've got to factor that in as well. The article continues. It says, in May of this year, just 14% of America's college seniors said they had steady career-type jobs lined up for their lives after graduation. Thus, 86% of America's college graduates, about 5 out of every 6, have zero in the way of career prospects a few weeks before getting their degrees, meaning they have absolutely no clue what it is they're going to do. They might know what they want to do, but they don't know, like, how they're actually going to go about doing what they want to do. They don't have a job lined up. They just know, well, I'm going to graduate and then I'll go look for work. And that is not really the way life is supposed to be. Like, you should have some kind of plan. Even if the plan is, well, I'm going to go live in my car and work at McDonald's. You should have some kind of a plan. And the fact that 86% of college graduates have nothing lined up in their senior year just before they graduate is really bad. That is bad. But it's one of these things of, it's bad in the they lack personal responsibility area bad, not bad as in there needs to be some kind of law to fix that. Hey, don't forget, every Wednesday is the Ask Me Anything. It's the day where I answer your questions. So send those over, AMA@FPPradio.com. And tune in every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, FPPradio.com.